This podcast is not sponsored or supported by any business or organization. The views reflected on these podcast episodes are my own. Be aware I am not a medical doctor, travel agent, or any other kind of expert. But I hope you still enjoy. Hey friends, welcome to the Gluten-Free Advocate, a Substack and podcast that helps me process my health journey and my determination to pretend that those health conditions don't exist at all. If you're looking for tips, tricks, and learnings for traveling the world with celiac disease and type 1.5 diabetes, you have come to the right place. Now, let's get started. Hi everyone, welcome to another week of the Gluten-Free Advocate. I'm really excited to have you guys here. This week is going to be a little bit different, as sometimes we're ought to do here on this podcast. And this one is a pretty important episode. It's a little delay of a response, but a couple weeks ago, actually in the month of May, you'll probably have heard, if you're part of the gluten-free community, about a podcast episode that took place that actually it was one amongst many podcast episodes during Celiac Awareness Month that made statements that suggesting that celiac disease was not real and that it was just a rather recent thing. I'm not going to name that particular podcast that made it go viral and made this issue go viral, but you're going to hear more about this later on. A lot of folks responded to that particular podcast episode. No apology at this time has been issued to the community. And I think, that's to be expected. People don't feel the need to apologize for their ignorance anymore, but that's a conversation for another day. I just want to be able to make my own statement on my frustration with why people need to be a little bit more open-minded when it comes to diseases, illnesses, anything of the sort that people are dealing with in their struggles. I have been told that things are all in my head. I have been told it's really not that big of a deal, even by own family members that also have celiac disease and don't take it as seriously as I do. That's all fine and everybody's prerogative, but I cannot imagine going to somebody else that has a physical or mental disability or has an illness of their own, going to a cancer patient and telling them that what they're experiencing and the accommodations that need to be made so that they can have a quality of life. I would never tell them that what they're experiencing is not real and that they should just stay home and not go out and exist in the world. I'm probably preaching to the choir because you're not listening to a podcast about gluten-free life if you, unless you are dealing with it yourself. And I think it's, as I was starting to lose hope in humanity, as it tends to do, you always see a small light in the darkness. And that is this gluten-free community and how we all came together with a strong response. Out of many, we became one voice. And part of that initiative and how we were able to do that, my friend Ben, he is part of my Aussie fam in obviously Australia, that I'm saying my Aussie fam. He's come up many times on this podcast, and you should be listening to his podcast as well, a gluten-free podcast. He got a bunch of us gluten-free podcasters on a roundtable and had us have a full-on discussion about it. And it was really cathartic to be able to be in a community and not responding by myself. And yeah, there's response on social media and people commenting and coming together, but it was another thing to look people at their faces and see their reactions, and a lot of us pretty much in lockstep with one another and feeling how we move forward in all of this. It was a really amazing episode. Now, Ben offered that I could play the entire thing here for you, but in trying to continue building our community together, you're going to only be able to hear a small preview of what's to come. But if you want to hear more, I will leave the link to the episode in my show notes, or to Ben's link in his website in my show notes, that you can go and listen to the full episode. I think it's going to be a really worthwhile conversation. I'm so proud to have celiac disease. I'm so proud to not be afraid of using my voice. I'm so proud to be part of a community that believes in free speech and being able to vocalize things. It is empowering. Well, now I've fully rambled on. I'm going to give you that small preview of this episode, and I can't wait to hear your response.
And might get into this now. There's been a massive response from the celiac and gluten free community, like I was saying in the beginning, and they've taken to social media to share their thoughts. And this happened during Celiac Awareness Month, like we've been talking about, which just adds insult to injury. But like, how does everyone, think we've responded as a community so far? Do you think it's been positive? Do you think we could do it in a different way? Yeah, I'm just keen to hear your thoughts on that.
I've really enjoyed seeing a lot of the graphics that are being shared just to try to spread awareness of like what symptoms for us are actually like for me personally, like after I saw that, I just posted a picture of myself. This is an invisible illness. That is what's frustrating about an autoimmune condition that doesn't have a physical debilitating presence. And I posted this picture of myself. I just gotten my hair done. I look cute. I'm at the salon. And then I have this list of all of the things that I've been dealing with in the last month because I got glutened. And no, I didn't need to use an EpiPen. No, I didn't balloon up or anything like that. But I had a migraine 15 out of 30 days last month. I have dermatitis herpetiformis. I have rashes on my eyelids, on my lips. I have to use a topical steroid to help alleviate the itch that I deal with from that. Like, those are all the things that are frustrating about an autoimmune condition in general is it's an invisible illness. So people look at us and we don't look sick. And I think that's what's really hard is most people, unless outsiders, and I'm saying like outsiders as people who don't live with celiac disease or any other food intolerance really in general, looking in, unless they know us on a very, very deep level and they spend a lot of time with us, it doesn't look like a disease that really is hard to deal with. But it's people who are very close to us who know how hard social gatherings are, who know how hard the emotional toll this disease takes on us. And so I've really enjoyed seeing the educational graphics that have been posted, being like, okay, this podcast is very clear that we still have a lot of educating to do, and we still have a long road ahead of us of like what needs to be shared and sharing your own story and sharing, don't be afraid of sharing your story because your story will help someone else. Like it really will. And so I have enjoyed seeing the graphics that have been easy to reshare, put on your stories about the real facts about celiac disease.
I think it's really tricky because I share with Lauren that we also both have type 1 on top of celiac. Sorry, Lauren, not to out you, but you're pretty public about you're the reason I got diagnosed. So, because you're public about it. But it's funny because once people see the sensor on my arm, there are no questions asked. It's just people are there for me and they're like, okay, let me know if there's anything. I don't have to say a thing. They just are volunteering to help. And so part of this has been making me wonder, do I have to film all of the gross things that happen to me the next time I get glutened and post it out there? But then I realized there is a content creator, Eat Gluten Free with me. She films every time she gets glutened on accident. She films the entire process of what it means to her. And then people are also critical of her for doing that, and I have to check myself of I was one of those people that were critical of why was she doing that. And now this situation was such a wake up call of I'm now really appreciative of all of what she has done to be so vulnerable and sharing the really ugliest parts of having celiac disease. And it's sometimes I wish I didn't have a sensor on my arm. I don't really like people knowing that I have type 1, but maybe just in the difference in how people react, it is important to have like a sticker on our foreheads or something along the lines. And maybe it's time to get gross. And I'm curious of hearing other people's thoughts, but maybe they've got to see some really intense videos. The comedian said she wanted to see our reaction and she wanted to give us buttered dinner rolls. We could give that to her if she wants, but I still don't think it's going to make a difference either way because people are going to be in their corners and believing and digging their heels in of, oh, we're just doing it for the likes or something. It's going to be something else stupid. So I think us just letting our freak flags fly and being who we are is one day there will be a day where celiac disease is treated like type 1. And I think it's just got to give it time. And other than that, I unfortunately don't know what to do because I think in the world that we live in, there is no winning right now other than just putting one foot in front of the other and doing your best that you can.
Well, there's always going to be the doubting Thomases too. I mean, and it's none of their freaking business. I mean, what we go through, and so many people who have celiac disease not just have bizarre symptoms that maybe wouldn't seem obvious or wouldn't even seem like that mattered to somebody, is like, oh, that's not that big of a deal, suffer through it. But there's the silent celiacs, and it's such a complicated disease that even if we described, whatever our symptoms were, and they didn't seem that bad to somebody, they would have to really take time to understand what's happening inside of our bodies and what an autoimmune disease is and what that's setting us up for in the long run, like the constant exposure to gluten, and what we could be getting later, and maybe we're going to get another autoimmune disease because of exposure to gluten, or we could be getting cancer or something else. Like, that's a really hard, complicated story that most people are just not going to get. No matter how many times we really go through it, and nobody's gonna. If it's not personal, they're not going to take the time to understand that, because it's not the, oh my God, there's an ambulance here and they're on the floor because they had this allergic reaction I just saw right in front of my face. So it's no matter what we do, it's not going to be something that a lot of people are going to understand. So I think you just keep doing what you're doing and what feels natural to you for your own page, as a creator. And there will still be some people who are going to show what they show, and other people who are going to be more, reserved about their own stories. And we have to just keep trying to spread the information as we can and get the information out there in these different modalities. I mean, there was a video I saw, I think it was today. They did one of those cat videos on what celiac disease is, like a funny cat video. And I mean, so it's getting out there in these different ways, because mainstream media is picking it up, I guess, now because of all of this interest right now. And I guess you got to take that as a win on some level, that people are talking about it. So maybe people will find out little bits and pieces of information in different ways. I mean, the cat video got some pieces right, so people will hear about some parts of celiac disease from the cats. I don't know.
It's an interesting point, because a lot of people are talking about, is this just like good PR for, like, any PR is, any press is good press for them. But on the other side of that, there might be someone who sees that article and sees Robbie talking about this and Alex, and they go, what is celiac disease? And looking that up and finding out some symptoms, or finding out, looking at some content creators and, perhaps like getting tested themselves, maybe. But yeah, like sort of, any sort of talk of celiac disease and the gluten-free diet, I think, hopefully will lead to some sort of positive result. Hopefully. And hopefully it doesn't lead to just more misinformation and people just disregarding the disease in general. But yeah, like I said at the beginning, Mike and Cam from the Celiac Project can't join us, unfortunately, today, but they did send an audio message to us. All right, I'm just going to mute myself and I will play that for you guys, because I think that'll lead nicely into our next part.
Hey, Ben, thank you so much for including us in this conversation about the Call Me Daddy podcast and Robbie Hoffman's what we think are ignorant comments. This is Mike and Cam from the Celiac Project podcast, and we will be doing our own, just a general talk about negativity that will be out June 17th as well. So if the listeners want to hear that, it'll be a little more nuanced and longer, but I know you wanted something today. So yeah, we were really disappointed that this has happened yet again, and we're really blown away by the way that our community has come out and said their piece about it, because as we were just discussing, when humor doesn't land, and I don't know if we're viewed as like an easy target or what the plan was with this, but it landed with a thud, and I'm so glad that our community stepped up and has said their piece. What do you think, Cam? What do you want to add?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think in this situation, the joke or the comments missed the mark. It seemed more just kind of like a complaint. There was no real humor in it other than her saying until she sees someone's head explode. So really not that funny. And I agree that the backlash from the community has shown that it really didn't land well with us at all. But I'm hoping that out of this negative situation and all of the commotion, that the community is going to be able to educate the public better. Maybe people reading the comments online will have a better understanding. I doubt that there's going to be a follow up on their podcast about this sort of a thing. It just doesn't seem their style to, acknowledge it even. But yeah, I just think we all need to keep educating and moving forward and not let it bother us more than our initial reaction. Like now that it's happened and we've handled it, we're communicating. I think it's time to move forward.
Yeah, well said. And one other thing I'll add, if people are really outraged too, something you can do that could be tangible is that podcast has many, many sponsors. They're very successful. You can reach out to the sponsors and tell them how unhappy you are that they said hurtful and incorrect things about the gluten-free and celiac community. And hopefully that can have some positive ramifications where when it affects their bottom line, sometimes they take notice and go, oh, I can't just talk willy-nilly about subjects that I don't know about and spread this is just misinformation. Because once you're talking about something like this, and the reason why I think we all have to come out as a community to talk about it is we need to show people this isn't correct information, because there are people listening to this who know very little about celiac and gluten-free living and people who are dealing with it. So we have to show them the realities of it. And yeah, really thank you again for letting us say our 2 cents, and thanks for all you do.
Thanks, Ben.
So that was Mike and Cam. I love those guys. A big reason why I started up this podcast, actually. But yeah, I just wanted to get your thoughts on that. And I just wanted to tie this in as well. Matt from A Gluten-Free Street Gang, as we were talking about, he posted up the fact that we should probably stop, giving Robbie and Alex airtime by creating social media posts about it. And, it kind of only gives them PR. And he called for us to complain a lot, like Mike was saying there, to, sponsors and Spotify and YouTube, and, in an effort to kind of hit them where it hurts at their bottom line. So yeah, what are your thoughts particularly on that, guys? I'm really interested to hear what you think about that.
I loved that call to action. And I saw that post from Matt. And I thought that was a really great way for the community to kind of galvanize and, like you said, hit where it hurts. And these two players in this equation, do we need to care about ever sensitizing them? But they do care, obviously, about the people who sponsor them, just letting them know that, hey, this isn't right. This isn't acceptable. I know there were people who were saying they were, he listed their advertisers, their sponsors, their networks, etc. People were saying they were canceling different things. And yeah, I mean, we really can speak a lot of times through our wallet and where we spend. And to the point of galvanizing, I think a silver lining of this all too is that we really have, as a community, when these kind of outrageous things happen, it is a way that we really kind of do galvanize and really get tight together. Fortunately, we don't want it to be around these kinds of things, but if it makes people active in some way that they weren't before, whether it's sharing a post or telling somebody or opening up a conversation, then, but I like that suggestion of the sponsorship.
I think any call to action, is helpful. Like, just otherwise people just feel like they're frustrated and shouting into the wind, right? So, but it's right now, it's not been like a community effort. I think it's going to have to be to actually do anything or move any needles. It's going to have to be like all of us coming together with the celiac support groups and everyone saying, okay, we've decided that we're all going to do this one thing and we're going to do it together, speak with one voice, because otherwise it's still not going to be successful. But it is nice to be able to identify something that isn't actually something we could do, because otherwise it just feels like we're being frustrated and, made to feel like we're being acted upon once more.
Thank you for joining me this week for an episode of The Gluten-Free Advocate. For more information on what's discussed on the podcast, check out the episode description and/or my Substack, The Gluten-Free Advocate. If you have any questions or fun stories to share, feel free to reach out at hieatexplorelove@gmail.com. Till next time. This episode is produced by Leigh Francis Productions.